Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Carology from Auto Trader. Now, if you work in marketing or sales or really anything in OEM or dealerships, you have something to do with selling cars to consumers. And today's episode, you cannot afford to miss because we're going to be learning all about consumer psychology and the way it affects how consumers make decisions, how they interpret advertising, how they decide which car to buy, and ultimately how they go through that sort of sales process, that shopping journey. So there's so much for all of us to learn. And today I'm going to be joined by Insights Director Nick King from Auto Trader UK. It's the fourth time that Nick's joining us here on Carology. He's back by popular demand. And who better to explain to us the way that consumers make decisions, and hopefully we can all learn a little something and therefore sell more cars to Canadians.
Hi Ian, lovely to be here. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to taking part. Good to see you too.
Good to see you too, my friend. And I'm looking forward to it as well, because this is a little different to, a lot of the time, Nick, you spend a lot of your time looking at data and what's happening with different trends and things like that. I know you also have a bit of a penchant for psychology and the way that consumers think. I've seen you present this kind of stuff before, but this stuff is absolutely fascinating, right? Because it really gets to the nub of how we sell things, and in this case, how we sell cars.
Yes, that's right. So I hope today to open everyone's eyes a bit to consumer psychology. Really, that's my thing. I'm going to take you through a brief presentation which looks at how things change and actually how we interact with each other, and how the briefest of things have an impact, how our brains react to things without us knowing, how we're actually more unconscious than we are conscious. And if you appeal to the unconscious brain, you actually can persuade me to do things without realizing it. That's what I aim to get through today.
So it sounds like this could be a source of an amazing competitive advantage. If you can understand even a little bit behind that psychology and that science of persuasion, I think it could go a hell of a long way to, like I say, competitive advantage versus maybe the way we're very rational these days. There's so much data for us to consume. And, even the way as a marketer, the way that we construct advertising and things like that, it can get very rational. But we have to remember, the goal is persuading this irrational thing, this human being, to take the action that we want them to take.
Absolutely. And in the world where I am going to obviously talking about cars, I am going to talk about electric cars because they aren't going away. How can we use this kind of psychology to reframe a position to its actual behavioral economics, which is a posh word for psychology, but it's how do you reframe a problem into an opportunity? And that's what we'll end up with today.
Well, it sounds fascinating, and I can't wait to get started. So, Nick, if you wouldn't mind, please do take it away.
All right, okay. So, does much really change? Right. So, it's a big question, really. And 100 years ago, in fact, in May 1924, just over 100 years ago, the MG Group launched, the Morris Group, which is that's what MG stands for. That well-known brand, particularly in the UK, particularly well-known, although there are MGs all over the world. And of course, now the MG has begun to be all-conquering because of their Chinese ownership, and they're coming into the EV world too. But actually, the brand is 100 years old today. If we just go back to the 50s, the 1950s, driving around in the 1950s, we drove around in cars with big fins, with big wheels, with leather, with velour, with Elvis Presley in Las Vegas. It was grand. And in the late 1950s, this car launched, an electric car with a little fin. And what's interesting is that in the late 1950s, this is around 1957, 58, the worries people had about electric cars, even then, were exactly the same as the worries they have today. Range, charge, and cost. How many miles am I going to get out of it? What's it cost to run? And how dependable is the battery? The sort of questions, if you're a retailer today, you're going to have today. Exactly the same problems. And that was 65 years ago. And 65 years ago, GM came out with automatically guided cars, which is basically, or they called it autopilot. The only difference really between Tesla and GM in the 1950s is a hyphen. Tesla call it autopilot, but they take the hyphen away. Obviously, it's a better product, but actually, this was never going to work the way this picture does. But actually, that's been around for a while too. And at the same time, in the late 50s, DeSoto started to try and sell vehicles at shopping malls, direct to consumer, the agency model, for want of a different word, which you hear people talk about all the time. So this agency model, is this all brand new? Actually, no. Manufacturers have been thinking about how they can make more margin out of a car right from year dot, effectively. Nothing's new, really. But things do change. 41 years ago, I was a student in my first year at Loughborough, studying psychology and art and design, and we were in the Union building watching Blade Runner. And Blade Runner, the film, in the Session of the Future comes on, and we all sit there in our student union watching this amazing film and going, wow, God, amazing, amazing. Harrison Ford is Decker. He plays a detective. And at one point, Decker goes onto his computer. And we all said, whoa, blimey, he's got a computer. And he says, enhance the image. And the picture got bigger. And we all sat there going, wow, can't imagine doing that. Can't imagine doing that. And of course, now we've all got our phones and we all pinch the squeeze and it's just absolutely normal. But 40 years ago, that was rocket science, total rocket science. In Blade Runner, there were blimps and airships and buses driving around with big images on them and graphics and moving graphics and a screen. And we all sat there going, blimey, I can't imagine that. And then here is a dust cart in London just a couple of years ago with a digital screen on it. And here is a bus with a digital screen on it. And here is a lorry with a digital screen, which you see all the time. So as consumers, we are seeing these all the time. Blade Runner is here. It's all happened. But actually, as consumers, we are subjected to around about 10,000 images, brands every day. 10,000 a day. I am now looking at Dell, Sony, Apple, Coke, Breitling, Gant. That's just Bic. That's just in 1 second. We see 10,000 a day because that's the world we live in. If you've got, say, 2 years left on your car finance, you've got 2 years left. In 2 years, an average consumer will see over 7 million adverts, brands, 7 million. And they've got to cut through. And our brains are limited in capacity. They're amazing things, but they are limited to the number of things they can do. We make, on average, as human beings, 36,000 decisions a day. Sounds like a lot. But one of those decisions starts off with, I need to brush my teeth. I need to pick up my toothbrush. I need to pick up the toothpaste. I need to unscrew the cap. I need to squeeze the toothpaste onto the toothbrush. That's 5 decisions. And you haven't even begun to brush your teeth, let alone leave the house and actually live and have a job. And if we go over our limits of decisions, we get into overload. That's why you get tired. Our brains are amazing, but we need to make it easy because our brains are designed to feel, not to think. Even when your brain does produce conscious thoughts and feelings, they are more in the service to the needs of managing your body than you realize. So how does our brain work? I've been studying our brain, since 1983. I'm still learning about it, but in really simplistic terms, our brain is split into 2 parts, primal and rational. Primal brain is really old, really old. It's been around, it reacts to basic stimuli, noise, sight, sound, smell. It's been around since Neanderthal man sees a saber-toothed tiger out of the corner of their eye, and they see it and glance and think, right, that's it, I need to run. So it keeps you alive. It kept you alive. And we still like using our primal brain because it's instant. It reacts. It's unconscious. Our rational brain is a lot younger in evolutionary terms, and we use it to create something, to build a complicated spreadsheet, to build a laptop, to build a car, to do something difficult. It's hard work using our rational brain. And as human beings, we are fundamentally lazy in the nicest possible way. We want to do things that are easy. If something is hard, we have to think about it. We have to use our rational brain, and that's tiring. I did a hands up of friends and colleagues during COVID lockdown and said, who's tired? And everyone said, oh, I'm tired all the time. Why am I tired? Because you've had to use your rational brain more than normal. You know, had to wear a mask, didn't want to wear a mask, had to have a jab, didn't want to have a jab, wanted to go on holiday, couldn't go on holiday. There was loads of decision making all the time, but now we're out of that, thankfully, and it's back to normal, back to being primal brain. Primal brain reacts to basic stimuli, something emotional, visual, or memorable, or personal. So an example, where you've been driving for a regular journey you know quite well, it takes a couple of hours, but at the end of the journey you pull in and you think to yourself, ooh, I don't remember anything about the last 20 minutes of the journey. Oh my God, was I asleep? No, hopefully you weren't asleep, but nothing contrastable to the norm happened. Contrastable to the norm could be someone pulls in front of you. Suddenly, visually you see the red lights go on, and emotionally you think, "Ooh," but it didn't happen. You were okay. So it's instant recognition. Actually, it's not just human beings. This is a cat, as you can see, and behind this cat is a cucumber. Watch what happens. That's not me laughing. That's not me laughing, and that's obviously no cruelty to animals. But what that cat did was it thought it was a snake, and it immediately went, "Wow, run away, flee." That's primal brain saving your life, basically. So we make decisions based on habit, shortcuts, and emotions. We are everything but rational. We're actually not thinking machines that feel. We are feeling machines that think. Our brain is incredibly powerful. It weighs only 2% of our total body, but uses up 20% of the energy. That's why you can get tired, and sometimes you just fall asleep. So, how much of the brain is conscious and how much is unconscious? Well, we all think we're conscious. Oh, I make conscious decisions all the time. Yes, of course I do. That's human nature. But actually, are we really? So we asked a whole load of neuroscientists, really, really clever people with huge brains, size of really bright neuroscientists, neurodoctors, and asked them, how much of the brain is conscious?
Imagine that sheet of paper represents everything the brain can do. How much do you think is conscious and how much do you think is unconscious?
I guess if I had to guess, I would say that if this is everything the brain can do, about this much is conscious.
So I only show this because, as you can see, they all tend to agree it's very small. It's a tiny percentage of what we do is actually conscious. Even though we think we're all conscious and we're living in the world and we're conscious, actually, a lot of what we're doing is completely unconscious. So how do you create a primal brain experience if we are living in this unconscious world? And it's normal, we all do. How do you actually attract me? Don't forget 10,000 things you're seeing every day. What you need to do is make it simple and make it easy. And that sounds facile and obvious, but as an example, this is Lego bricks. I hope you're all familiar with Lego. In Canada, I'm sure you are. It's a toy for children, but adults play with it too. It's a series of brown and green, but actually, if you squint your eyes, you can see it is the Mona Lisa. You don't need that famous painting. You don't need that much information to see something, actually. Here's some more Lego bricks. And with very limited information, we can see that top left, it's the Simpsons. Top right, it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In the middle on the left, my favourite South Park. Then the Smurfs. Bottom left, Asterix the Gaul. And my absolute favourite on the bottom right, Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street. Very little information, but actually what we can all immediately tell and understand what they're trying to communicate. So we do make 35,000 decisions every day. And if something looks wrong, it completely throws us. These waterproof Wellington boots are never going to work, are they? Because hang on, they've got a hole in the front. This watering can, that'll never work. How do I pick this fork up? How do I drink out of these glasses? And soup doesn't come in a Coke bottle, and you don't get Kit Kat out of a toothpaste tube. And they're really going to hurt. If something looks wrong, and these are obviously mad examples, it does do your brain in. So imagine in our world, in automotive, if you're thinking about buying a car, you're looking on BMW site, and you're looking for an X2 series, and you're scrolling down, and you're thinking, yes, well, I fancy a new car, 1.8 SE Sport, as an M Sport, or Sport only, X Sport, and and then what BMW had to do was actually say, don't worry, actually, on the configuration assistant, there are no conflicts. And that's not easy. That's not, blimey, talk about do your head in. This isn't simple. This is effectively a simple way of looking for a vehicle. What we need to do really is just to keep it simple. Movement drives attention. This McFlurry from McDonald's is spinning, so you look at it, you pull something down, it grabs your eye. You need to try and grab me. If you wanted to promote something, and this is sound. Look, I know you're looking at this going, well, this is obvious, isn't it? Yeah. This is the same picture, but of the just playing with colours, the contrast has immediately made the image of the person in the centre stand out dramatically. And all they've done is changed one colour, really. We do a lot of eye tracking testing, and I'm sure you do it too in whatever business you're watching. And you can have computers and cameras seeing where the eyes are looking. And as human beings, we tend to look at heads and faces more than anything else. Humans look at humans. Humans look at animal heads and faces. Animals look at faces. We look at faces. And that can completely spoil an advert or a piece of creative if you're trying to do it. So here's an example. This is the National Trust. And in the UK, the National Trust looks after heritage places of wealth and importance, buildings and parks. And they were trying to promote, the National Trust here were trying to promote beaches. And they had 4 or 5 children and people on the beach. But people didn't look at the word National Trust. They looked at the heads. You can see the head, the heat maps. The dark red shows where the eyes went. They looked at people. We look at people. Here is the Duracell bunny. The Duracell bunny, when it looks at you, you look at the Duracell bunny. You can see the heat map on the left. But when the Duracell bunny looked at the word Duracell, you followed the eye line and people looked at the word Duracell. So the ad on the left would not have worked. The ad on the right, way more powerful. This is hair shampoo. The model on the left is looking at you, the audience. So you all look at, as you can see on the heat map on the left, her eyes. But when she looks at the shampoo, we follow the eye and we look at the brand Sunsilk. Amazing, isn't it? You wouldn't realise, but we are so, that's unconscious. Unconsciously, we just go, oh, yeah, I better have a look, I better follow. So perception completely matters. In the world of psychology, we have a really basic premise called the primacy effect and recency effect. Primacy effect means first impressions count. Recency is the last thing that happened to you have an impact too, but the first impression is really important. We all make impressions. We all make instant decisions immediately, and that is primal brain friendly, and that saves our lives. That stopped a saber-toothed tiger from killing us millions of years ago, but we make impressions. A negative thing is a very powerful impression. In a clinical trial, it took 9 positive outcomes to change 1 negative, but only 4 negatives to change a positive. So anything negative or bad or wrong, like that, those forks covered in spikes or the glasses you can't drink, it just makes you go, oh, forget it. So in automotive, here is a vehicle. This is one of our customers, had it for sale. I've blanked out who they are, but it was for sale for 220 days. So a long time, way over stock. Why hasn't the car sold? Because it's floating. Is that actually there? On Auto Trader in the UK, we have nearly 500,000 cars for sale. 500,000. And you're going to be zooming through those cars on your phone, looking at them and going, well, that's a terrible image next. So they will be spending money promoting this vehicle, but it's gone. Here is a £300,000 Rolls-Royce. In Canadian dollars, that's more like $500,000. So a huge amount of money. And look at the centre wheel hub. This is from Rolls-Royce themselves, rusty. I presented this to the MD of Rolls-Royce, not to embarrass him, but just to say, my word, look at that. He was dumbfounded. This is a brand new Toyota. Parking support brake malfunction, visit your dealer. Oh, it's only done 2 miles and they're promoting it. This is a hopeless picture of a boot, we call it, or trunk, you would call it. Useless, pointless. And this car genuinely was for sale on Auto Trader. £150, $250 to you, drive it away. Well, don't drive it away tomorrow. I'm being a bit facetious with the last one, but that really was for sale. But of course, if you put that up, no one's going to look at it. That's not primal brain friendly. That's unconsciously, forget it. Even what side of the paper you use has an impact. These 2 identical looking adverts, which one would you go for? We in the West read from left to right. So the car on the left, pointing left to right, performs a lot better than the one on the right because you're having to look. It's the same way when you're presenting on a stage, one should always stand on the left because we read from left to right. If you go to a conference and the lectern is on the right-hand side, you spend your time looking at the slides and looking at the speaker, but if you're standing on the left, it's easy. Number of times I was at a conference literally yesterday and the plinth was on the wrong side, so I had to get up and stand on the other side. Anyway. 2 similar ads, very similar. There are many reasons to choose a BMW. Can you name one? There are many reasons to choose a BMW. Can you name 10? Which one do you think is more effective in increasing likelihood to buy? Surprise, surprise, it's the simpler one, 27% more effective. And when you think, well, yes, it's obvious, isn't it? Well, yes, it is. It is. It's not meant to be hard. This is not meant to be hard. So what would be the most effective way to make System 1 Primal Brain sit on and take notice? I'm going to show you now a shirt for sale on ASOS, which is as seen on screen. It's a fashion marketplace in the UK. You may have a similar one in Canada. And this is a man's shirt. It's £25, so it's $30. It's not an expensive shirt. And there's a video. There's a video of a man in a shirt for $30, £25. It's personal, visual, tangible, emotional, all of those primal brain friendly facets straight away, and it's a shirt. So the obvious takeaway here is if that's the baseline now, if I see that's when I'm looking for a shirt, what do I see when I'm looking for a vehicle? Significantly higher value. Is a silent walk around video enough? The best retailers are nailing this. We have a lot in the UK, and I'm sure you've got a lot in Canada too who nail this. But we do have an issue. We have an issue here in the UK, and it's probably global, that we need to persuade people to get into something complicated, which are electric vehicles. How can we use the primal brain, the reframing, the behavioral economics to get people into this? Well, we need to make it simple. We asked a sample car owners, do you understand the acronyms? Only 29% said, I know what EV stands for. No, it's not Evelyn. No, it's electric vehicle. Only 19% said, I know what ICE stands for. It's not ice cream. It's internal combustion engine. We may use this daily, hourly in our lives in automotive retail, but consumers don't get it. We need to make it simpler. What there is actually is an elephant in the room. The elephant in the room story is normally that there's something massive that everyone knows is there, but no one talks about. I'm going to argue we can reframe this. We can turn this round by reframing it. So here's a story that sort of sets it up. Imagine you're in Africa, middle of Africa, the 6 blind villagers and 1 sighted guru. One day, these blind from birth villagers are there, and this elephant walks into their village, and the sighted guru says, you've all got 10 seconds to touch this thing we call an elephant and describe it. First blind villager touches the trunk and says an elephant is like a snake. Next one touches the tusk and says an elephant is like a spear. Next one touches the ear. Elephant's like a leaf. Next one touches the leg. It's like a tree. Next one touches the body. Oh, elephant's like a hut. And the 6th one touches the tail. Oh, an elephant is like a vine. Which one of us is right? And the guru says, well, you're all right, but you're all wrong, because you can't see the whole thing. And when we describe electric vehicles, what many people think is range anxiety, charge anxiety, don't understand the acronyms, too much, haven't got a drive, where do I charge it? It's too expensive. There are so many problems, but actually, if you live with one, they are okay. And in fact, they're better than okay. So what we've done is we've done some research because there's things called the Z mandate, which I don't know if it's applicable in Canada yet, but in the UK, 22% of all new cars sold this year have to be zero emission, 22%. And it's going to grow to 80% by 2030 and 100% by 2035. These cars are coming every year. There's going to be more, and they have to do it, but not everyone's buying them. We can't have anyone left behind. 4,000 people took part. Representative sample. So we want to find out, we know who's bought them now, but who's next? Why haven't they bought yet? And who's further away? So in the UK, 46% said, yeah, I'm likely to consider an electric car, but only 10%, 1 in 10, said my next car will be electric. Because they don't fit my lifestyle. I don't trust them. It's too new. There's loads of barriers in the way. In our sample of 4,000, half were not ready and half were ready. And 10% of those already had them. When we asked what words do you use to describe an EV, the ones who are ready, who are the white columns, say, oh, well, they're environmentally friendly, it's modern, technologically advanced, cost-effective, reliable. But if you're not ready, you go, oh, no, they're really expensive and they're unreliable. But actually, prices for all EVs have come down quite dramatically over the last few years. They've had to because they were priced too high, but they're coming down. They're actually not that expensive. What are the benefits of owning one? If you're into them, you're all positive. You say, oh, I'm going to save money on fuel. Yes, they're cheaper to run. They cost less to maintain. But if you're not into them, you just think, oh, They take ages to charge. Oh, I need a charging point. Oh, look at the cost of electricity. You just see the negatives. This is our sample of 4,000 who take part. And this is some basic demographics. It's not a hideous chart, but you can simply see towards you on the left, bottom scale, towards the left-hand side, they're the early adopters. High income, they bought the early electric cars, the Tesla Model S's, etc. The further higher up you are on the scale is the opportunity, and there's a really lovely opportunity. If we overlay this with our diffusion, you start to see the market. Ah, yes, on the left, right, early adopters, high income. On the right, lots of opportunity, and there's some really obvious opportunities. If you're younger, of course, you're more into technology than if you're older. There's almost an up to 45-year-old age gap. Up to 45, you grew up. If you're under 45 now, you grew up with technology. If you're over 45, when you went to school, you didn't have a computer, and that's almost an inflection point. An inflection point where you live, rural, countryside, inner city, but a really lovely smack in the face opportunity. And it is obvious, and you're going to go, yes, of course, is driveways, off-street parking. If you've got to drive, and this does work particularly well in the UK because it's such a small country, but if you've got to drive, there's no reason not to have an electric car. Because what's the average mileage driven in the UK per car per day? It's between 6 and 10 miles. That's it, which is going to the supermarket, taking the kids to school, going to the station to commute. Any electric car, even a Mini, which has around 120-mile range, is therefore good enough for 10, 12 journeys if you've got to drive before recharging. And if you've got to drive, you'll charge up anyway. But people don't know that. There are millions of houses with drives in the UK. There are millions of houses with drives and apartments with drives in Canada, I know too. I know the distances are bigger, but if you're in a city centre, you're not going to be doing intergalactic mileage every day. I still have a diesel Mercedes estate car, which has a 750-mile range. I can't do 750 miles in one hit. I've got a 3-hour bladder. I know, I hate to say it, but I've got to stop. I've got to stop, and that's getting less as I get older. And it's normal. No one does intergalactic mileage without stopping. You just don't. But the fact that, it's only got a 250-mile range, well, that's not good enough. But you'll rarely use that. So how do we move people from could to will using behavioural economics? Not everyone with a drive is ready. These are the people who could buy, and they are a huge opportunity. They are tech confident, they're young and old, working full time, 50 to 100k income, which is a big income, ready to go after it. But they're not buying it because they don't understand. They haven't found it easy. They don't know how much they cost. What we need to do is be more clear. Cost is the main. What if we were more clear and more noisy about? So on our adverts, we need to be blindingly obvious. Actually, it's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. What if we were more clear about the convenience of home charging? Actually, you're going to be fine. Every retailer in the UK could have their own branded charger. So say we had Ian McDonald Motors in Croydon, your hometown, Ian, you could have Ian McDonald BMW, you could have the BMW franchise, and you could have Ian McDonald branded franchise branded chargers on every high street, on every house drive in Croydon and Bromley. You could. No one's grabbed that yet. You just work with the energy provider and do that. Talk about instant recognition and brand awareness. Only 50% of those really knew about specialist tariffs, and there are loads of specialist tariffs which are going to save you money. Only 15% knew. What if we were more clear or noisy about the cost savings they'd make? We need to put these in our ads, basically. You need to grab me so that I see this. So public charging, this is an opportunity, but public charging is out of anyone's control apart from the government. And we do try and lobby the government. There are loads of public chargers, but that's not the issue. Our driveway analysis shows there's a big group of people not considering for not very good reasons. So our low-hanging fruit are people with driveways, but there's a lack of clear understanding. If we make it blindingly obvious, show the prices and the running costs and how to get into home charging, we're going to grab them. And when you talk to people who have electric cars, they say the first thing they say is they're fun. Any electric car is fun because of the instant acceleration, but there's actually easily enough range for 95% of the journeys you're going to do. Cheaper if you've got to drive, all those good things, environmentally friendly. So when we look at a vehicle, here's an example of how could you nail this. This is an MG, like the oldest car, 100-year-old car, but this is a Chinese version, but this is for sale in the UK from a dealership up north called Luscombe's, and they are reputedly the best MG retailer in the country. They've sold 5,000 cars in a year, electric, which is pretty astonishing for one small dealership in Leeds, because they reframe. This is their ad, their site. I'm going to show you. We just look at here. You imagine you're looking to buy an MG. It's 23,995. They've got 57 pictures, wow, and a review and a video. As you scroll down the page, you see in plain English, battery size, range, plug type, charge type, scrolling down. Why buy an electric car? Well, you slash your running costs, pay no road tax. Smoother drive, fast charging, a growing infrastructure. There's a ban coming. Scroll down. What's it going to cost me to charge my electric car? What will I save running my electric car? Frequently asked questions. What's an electric car? What's the best home charger? Well, we recommend Right Charge. Or is it like driving a milk float? In the UK, milk floats, which were the milk machines that carried your milk around, were electric, and they buzzed along and they were rubbish. And that's the perception of electric cars. There is nothing like a milk float. You ought to get this image out of your head. Why would you recommend? Who would you recommend to buy one? They're not going to be for everyone, but we recommend if you're doing less than 250 miles, you're going to be okay. And where would I charge one? Well, here's a link to ZapMap. So if you're sat at home with a drive thinking, I fancy an electric car, and you see that ad and you scroll through it, is there any reason for you not to buy that? Because what they've done is they've reframed it. They've made me think, yeah, I can get into this. So when we consider the elephant in the room is actually fine if you explain it and you reframe. Have you got a drive? Yes. Never visit a petrol station again. Another example of a reframe is not how many miles do you do per day in your car, but how much time do you spend in your car? What's your typical journey? Well, my typical journey is 20 minutes. Well, you're not going to do more than 20 miles in 20 minutes, are you? Unless you break the sound barrier. Oh, yeah. It's reframing. And when I was coming up with the elephant analogy, like this one, I didn't realize, but actually Ganesh, who is the Indian goddess deity who appears as an elephant, is actually called the remover of obstacles. So it's completely opposite to the bad thing. It's actually a good thing if you have the elephant in the room. So clear information really is the way to ensure no one's going to get left behind. Show me the prices, show me the running costs, talk about home charging if you can. It's certainly, this is what we've been going out. And I was actually presenting this to a BMW dealer this afternoon, just before I come on this call, showed him some of these stats and he went, blimey, I hadn't thought of it that way before. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Nick. Yeah, very interesting as ever. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to take us through it. If you don't mind, a couple of things that kind of come to my mind that maybe the audience would also be interested in. You were talking about sort of the primal brain and the rational brain and actually how the primal brain is much bigger. It's been there much longer. And a lot of the decisions we make, because of that decision overload, we rely on that primal brain. I was thinking to myself, do you think there's any application there to the way that, like the real tip of the spear, like salespeople in dealerships and the way that, I know we've discussed this before about the way that different sales approaches to consumers in the showroom and things like that, or whether communicating over the phone. Is there anything about that primal versus kind of rational brain thing that could be useful to think about from a sort of face-to-face sales perspective for dealers?
There was a thing in the UK, there's probably a similar one in US too, in Canada too, sorry, not US, in Canada, where there was a training method that was how our car dealers taught how to buy cars. We had a system called Pendle in the UK, and it was how do you sell a car to someone? It does use psychology and primal brain, and it was horrible. It was, it's the old, when the customers come in to see the vehicle, you walk away from them and walk into the dealership and they will follow you, because you tease them. And it was like written in quite explicit. And when they want to do, you have to go then to ask your manager if you can approve the discount you're going to offer
The
them.
classic.
That's the classic. I'm just going to talk to my manager. And actually, all you're doing is going round the corner and having a cigarette. And they genuinely do that. And that's horribly true, because that's psychology of making you sit there and sweat. You think, oh, God, please come back with a deal. Really sorry. No, the best my manager can do is a 2% discount. You go, all right, I'll have it. And yeah. So all those kind of psychological tricks are horrible. And that gave our industry a bad name. The best retailers today, of course, were offering an omni-channel experience. And that's a horrible phrase, I know, omni-channel. It's blended retailing, it's on and offline working together. So that I'm on a marketplace, I'm on Trader, I'm on Autotrader, I'm looking at a vehicle. Can I reserve the car I'm looking at? Oh, great, I can reserve it so no one's going to buy it. Can I begin to talk about finance online before I come and see you? Yes, I can begin to get my finance deal together. So that actually then when I turn up at the dealership, I haven't got to start again. In the UK, buying a car takes about 4 hours when you're there. It's ages. And you have to go through all the finance regulations to make sure you're not being oversold or missold financed. It takes ages and it's really tedious. But actually, you can buy a holiday at home, sitting on your laptop or on your phone, and spend $10,000 on a holiday in 15 minutes. Similar money for a car on a holiday, a vacation, sorry, in your words. But I can't buy a car. I've got to go through all those kind of regulations. Can you make it easier for me? So we're working at Autotrader here to try and make a process. We call it, I completely forgot the name of what we call it. It's an online deal builder.
Deal builder, yes.
Deal builder. It's an obvious thing. Yeah, deal. Can I build the deal at home? Yes. Why couldn't you? And then the ultimate would be, you've got a part exchange valuation for your car. You've reserved the car you want to buy. You've started to get your finance. You drive into the dealership to go and see it. Automated number plate recognition spots your vehicle as you're driving in and says, aha, that's Ian's Mercedes. He's come in to exchange it for the Rolls Royce. I'm sure you're not buying Rolls Royce. Imagine you were a Range Rover, and you're pulling in, and the receptionist says, Mr. McDonald, welcome to Rolls Royce. Lovely to see you. This is Brian, who's going to be looking after you. They already know who you are. That would be the ultimate omni-channel experience. And talk about making you feel easy. And so you wouldn't even have to think. Unconsciously, you've just driven in there, and suddenly you're in, and you're signing, and you're doing it because it's all happened.
That's a really interesting lens, Nick, on the it's fun actually. So we're obviously, over here at Autotrader Canada, we're pursuing the omni-channel, empowering dealers to offer the omni-channel experience as well, because same thing, consumers tell us they want it. We can see they want it from the usage and also the conversion from lead to sale. Consumers want it. But why do they want it? And it's really interesting. I never thought of it through this lens of kind of decision fatigue, decision overload. I mean, we all know, and we've discussed it before, that going into the dealership in the old school way and spending 4 hours and signing all the papers, and you've got to make a decision about every 60 seconds on something or other, that's a bit painful. Consumers don't enjoy it. But now understanding the science behind it, they don't enjoy it because they're exhausted, because they can't make decisions like that. So the omni-channel thing and why it appeals starts to make total sense, because the consumer can split up those decision making into a period of 2 or 3 days at home, whatever. And then, just like you said, when it comes to the sort of in-person element of the omni-channel, yes, we're here in person together, but a lot of the decision making has been made in terms of how I've configured my deal. We also call it Deal Builder, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, and then you're right. Then my brain can focus on things like, do I trust this person? Do I like the feel of this dealership? Can I feel myself in this car? The really simple, primal brain stuff, like you said. Just them knowing your name when you show up and you feel like you're being looked after. And I like these people. That's a very primal urge. I trust these people. And because a lot of the rational decision making has been done at home. So it's really interesting, actually. I never really thought about the psychology and the science behind why consumers like omnichannel, but now it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because you can only do so much, and if you manage to split it, you summarise that beautifully, and that's exactly it. And just the icing on the cake is, I was presenting to a group of SEAT dealers at a forum literally 2 weeks ago. 30 of them in the room. SEAT's a brand here, it's part of the Volkswagen Group, and one of the dealers who has quite a large group is using Deal Builder already. He's on a trial, he's doing it, and he said brilliantly, we get between 60 and 80% conversion. What? Really? It's that good? People who use Dealboard are converting it between 60 and 80%. I mean, that's staggering conversion, because this has done exactly what you just so beautifully described. It's given them a chance to do their decision making when they're ready without being exhausted. Then when they turn up, they convert.
So that was really interesting. You know, one other thing that kind of I was thinking, listening to the EV stuff on that side, Nick, and I was sort of thinking of some of the OEM advertising that I see for EVs and the way that they're positioned and things like that. And it sort of occurred to me, I think you've got a point there. Like a lot of the EV advertising that I see from OEMs, and I would say probably more like the established kind of legacy type OEMs. You know, I won't name the names or anything, but a lot of the sort of feeling I get recalling their advertising, you know, their 30-second commercials and their 60 seconds is it's just as good as a combustion engine. It's just as good as the other car. Like it rarely talks about the benefit, and it seems to be. I understand why, because you know the marketer is sort of looking at the research. Okay, we know that consideration for EVs is actually declining a little bit here in Canada. We saw that in one of our latest studies. Why is that? It's a lot of the same kind of reasons you mentioned, and the natural response to that is, well why? Don't be scared, kind of thing. Like it's just as good. Whereas that's really not the sort of message. Certainly not the one that kind of appeals to the primal brain. It's, well, if it's just as good, then it's just as good, and it feels a bit scary, so I'm not going to make any change, right? As opposed to trying to activate something a bit more sort of, well, simple to understand is the key thing, as you said. There's way too much information in a lot of advertising. Really simple takeaway message, but something, as you said, targeted to a segment. And it is different by segment. What is the number one kind of turn on, not just for EV, but for any kind of car or model that's sort of being advertised? Figure out what the number one turn on is for that segment. It's classic stuff. Segmentation, exactly. Targeting, positioning.
Exactly. So, and a beautiful example, or a nice example, not beautiful example, was Apple when they launched the iPod. When they launched the iPod 20 years ago, you could buy an MP3 player from Sony, Panasonic, Toshiba, Sanyo, and they would advertise their product saying, this MP3 player has an OLED screen and a 1.3 megahertz hard drive, tech. And Apple come out and say, put 1,000 songs in your pocket. Oh, yeah, right. I understand that. It may have less processing power than that OLED screen, but so it's the lowest common denominator. It's basically, it's not scarcity, it's social proof. It's that social proof idea of just like, oh, right, I get that. And who wins? And we all love more hate them. Apple are. That's genius copywriting, absolute genius. And that is, in a similar vein, never visit a petrol station again. It's like, oh, right, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. Of course, if you've got a drive, even if you haven't got a drive, you'll probably be able to charge at the supermarket, the mall, wherever you go. But actually, you're going to be okay, really. I've been asked by quite a few manufacturers here to help. I mean, it's charming that they ask us because they like our insights, but can you help us with myth busting? So there's loads of myths around electric vehicles. They catch fire. They cause car parks to collapse. Genuinely, that was a headline. It was in the Sun. Ian, you'll know that's funny, but it was in the Sun. Car parks collapse because of EVs. But obviously it's a lie, but it's because they're so heavy. But then a Range Rover is heavy. A Discovery is heavy. They're actually not that heavy. They weigh 2 tons, but then so does a Range Rover, so does a Mercedes ML, so does an Audi Q8. These petrol and diesel cars were heavy. They're actually not that heavy. There was in Luton Airport, there was our car park caught fire. The airport car park caught fire. It was all over the news. Oh, it was an EV. Electric cars catch fire. It was an EV. Actually, it wasn't. It was a diesel Land Rover that was on fire as it drove into the car park. But the assumption was it's EVs. The problem is the news loves bad news. And when when bad news sells newspapers, gets people watching telly, so they jump all over it. So at the moment, for our industry, EVs are all just, there's not enough of them, so there's lots of bad news and people can jump all over them. As we get to a stage where by 2030, there'll be 8 million electric cars driving around even the UK, those bad news stories will go because electric cars actually don't, touch wood, catch fire. An internal combustion engine car is 20 times more likely to catch fire because it's got a fire in it anyway. That's what the spark is. They're already on fire, really. Combustion, combustion, exactly. There's the clues in the name. So, so myth busting is the other thing. We've been tasked with how can we help retailers understand this and bust those myths
It's fantastic. So listen, thanks so much for joining us, Nick. And again, for the fourth time here on Carology. I really appreciate you making the time. There's so many similarities between our two markets and our two businesses. And two kind of consumer bases. So it's always great to hear from the UK and what's going on over there and get your insights. And like I say, really appreciate you taking the time to help the Canadian OEMs and dealers and ourselves to understand more and think through some of these things. For the audience watching, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got some benefit from that. I'm sure you did. I certainly did. As a marketer, I found that absolutely fascinating, especially one working in automotive. If you would like to have more of this content, get more kind of insights into different things. Nick was talking about lead management, lead handling. We did a fantastic kind of masterclass series guide on lead handling and lead management in the dealership. You can find that, videos like this, all that and more at go.trader.ca. Or if you want to be a bit more passive about things, just follow autotrader.ca on LinkedIn, and these things will come to your feed in LinkedIn, and you can consume them there. So all that leaves to say is that thank you so much to Nick once again. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you. Hope to see you again soon.
Hope to see you again soon, Nick. And thanks for all of you for joining us on Auto Trader Carology.